Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and inside this training, you're going to be introduced to Brittany, who is an email marketing expert, someone who's worked with some amazing individuals in our industry and space, and she's going to talk all about how to improve your email conversions, okay? Because email is far from being dead. She shared amazing pieces of advice. I learned a ton. From my interview with Brittany, and I think you are in for a treat. Just a note, this was a live experience inside my Authority Hackers Facebook group. If you're not a member yet, I would highly encourage you to use the link below to join us because we hold weekly expert talks just like this, and I want you to enjoy the live experience next time, okay? So this is it. Also, make sure to subscribe if you are enjoying the videos. Make sure to also let me know what you thought in the comment section. And without any further delay, let's start. Brittany, we are going to discuss email marketing, something that I personally really am interested in. And I would love it if you can maybe spend a minute or two just to explain a little bit about your background and story and how is it that you got into email marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out just as a general service provider. I was doing all these different things, virtual assisting, marketing assisting, all these different kinds of things in order to sustain my lifestyle online. I really, really did not want a 9 to 5, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So I started doing all of that, and about a year into it, someone hired me just to write emails for them. I had been writing content for blogs, I had been writing web content, that kind of thing. And someone hired me just to do emails. And I just took it like another job. Yeah, sure, let's go. And I got in and I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. Like, this is a really, really cool thing that I didn't see a lot of people talking about. It was kind of this, yeah, you should do email marketing. Cool. And then people moved on. And I was like, no, no, no. If people nailed this, if people got email marketing, it could set up a foundation for their business. And so I started to develop more and more skills inside of email copywriting. I started to work my way up. I got to write for some really, really amazing people along the way. And now I've been doing this for about 4 years. And now I am a marketing and mindset coach for entrepreneurs, for online entrepreneurs. And I help them get intentional around the way that they are marketing and putting themselves out there through email. And then also kind of the mindset that goes through that, visibility, staying in front of your customers, all the stuff that kind of comes up when you are engaging more and more, right? There's a lot of mindset stuff that comes up. So now I do that. I absolutely love it. And I'm so, so excited to be here.
Yeah, we are too. It is so awesome to have you. And as I said earlier, email marketing is something that I personally am really interested in. I know that there's a lot of misconceptions in the industry. A lot of people claim that email is dead, but they claim it about everything. I remember when I was in e-commerce, I was basically doing drop shipping in a lot of platforms such as eBay, such as Etsy, and people told me that this is going to die as well. And it was like for 8 consistent years, people told me that it's going to die, and it wasn't. And also, the reason for why I'm so interested in email marketing is because I understand the power of having a list. I think that what happened to me basically with that e-commerce experience that I had is that my stores at one point got shut down, and I went from making thousands of dollars every month thinking, well, I was naive. I was very young, but thinking that all my future is already, settled, that I have everything that I needed. I mean, I was making a ton of money for my age, and I was feeling so happy, and then everything closed, and basically my entire income was shut down. I started to lose money on softwares and stuff. And I never got around to actually build a list. I was selling on eBay, I was selling on Etsy, but when it was over, I mean, I didn't have anything. It doesn't matter how many customers I've served during my years there, everything was disappeared, and it was so hard, obviously. And email marketing is something that I think a lot of people can benefit from because obviously it is also very cheap. I mean, it is one of those platforms that you can basically use even if you don't have a large capital, even if you're just beginning. But I think that a lot of people have a problem with conversions, and this is why I'm so excited because of our topic for today, which will be around conversions. So basically, again, depending on how you would like to navigate it, I'm giving you full control over this. I'm really am here interested to learn just like anyone else.
Yeah, cool. Okay, great. And that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs. The more that I'm in this space, I'm hearing stories, like you just shared stories where, myself, when I launched, I have a program that teaches email marketing. And the first time that I launched that program, my ad account got shut down. And like the day that I launched it. And so I had to fully rely on my email list in order to make it a successful launch. And I know that so many entrepreneurs have that story, have the time where, these platforms that we're on are amazing, right? eBay's great, Facebook is great, Instagram is great, but we don't own them, right? And so there's always this vulnerable spot where things could get ripped away from us. And so that's why I'm so passionate. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about email marketing. I can dive into like some of the common mistakes and some of the common things that I see people doing, if that works for you.
Sure, I would love that. And guys, I just want to encourage you, just like any other live, in case you have any questions, make sure to submit them now, because Brittany and I will answer them towards the end if we have enough time. And if we don't, I will make sure to go over every single one of your questions towards the end. So yeah, for sure, I would love to hear about the common mistakes. If we can help people to avoid those, it will be amazing.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the first and main things that I see is that people are inconsistent with their email marketing. And it's kind of like this twofold thing, right? So on one hand, when you are inconsistent with your marketing, you typically are hitting up your list only in launch time, right? And so you're only emailing when you need something. And if you think about any other relationship, any other time that you're communicating with somebody, if you only go to them when you need something, that's not going to be a good long-standing relationship, right? You're not going to get good results there. And so a lot of times I see entrepreneurs and they're almost emailing in like, I call it impromptu mode, right? Like they're in the middle of a launch or they're about to be in the middle of a launch and they're like, crap, my list, I should be doing something. And then they go and they fire off a bunch of emails that are like, hey, go buy this thing, go buy this thing. And then they don't get conversions and they're like, email marketing doesn't work. Nobody reads emails. It's dead, right? That's where we start to hear these things. It's dead. It doesn't work. I can't get any traction with it. And it's like, no, you just have to be consistent with it, right? And so if we are emailing in between launches, you might hear it called like nurturing your list, right? That's essentially what this is. So if you're emailing in between launches and you're keeping people warm with value-driven content, then all of a sudden you're investing in a relationship that you can then withdraw from. It's like relationship capital, essentially, right? You're putting effort and you're putting time into this thing, into these people, into this relationship. And then when it is time to launch, you have an actual relationship with them and you can communicate in a way that they're going to respond to because you've been communicating with them. And then B, as like from a technical standpoint, from your email service provider, they've been opening your emails. So your deliverability is going to be so much better because you've been hitting them up consistently and they've been opening your emails. Email service providers like ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, all the ones that we use and know of, they really pay attention to your rate, your open rates, right? And so if you are only sending during launches and they're not getting opened, then you're just consistently going down in the deliverability, right? And so I see that a lot, and I see a lot of people saying like, oh, it just doesn't work. And if I can get one point across to you during this, to all of you guys listening during this live, is that you should be hitting your list up at least once a week. No matter what's going on in your business, no matter what if you're in the middle of a launch, great, hit them up more. But you should be emailing your list at least once a week with value-driven content. It doesn't have to be original content. It can be from other places that you're posting. Like if you're posting on Facebook, you can take that and abridge it and put it into an email. If you have a podcast, you can run an email that teases that podcast episode, right? But you should be nurturing your list at least once a week to keep them warm, keep you top of mind. And then when your launches come around, you're going to have so much better result just from that one act, just from doing it once a week. So that's one of the top things that I see.
Yeah, and I think that is very true, not just for email marketing. I see that happening on Messenger. I decided to mute and unfriend people who basically reached out only when they had something they wanted. It's either a sale. Have you heard about that? Have you heard about that? They made a sale, they made a promotion. And that is very annoying, guys. So unlike email marketing on Messenger, you might have, you'll be receiving a higher, obviously, open rate because you're sending people on Messenger, but don't expect the conversions to be any higher if that is your approach to marketing. If you're just in it for the sales, if you're not providing value, if you're just, sending inconsistently once a month when there's some sale for some program you affiliate, then obviously you wouldn't convert. It doesn't matter on the platform. It doesn't matter if you're running ads, if you're sending one-on-one kind of messages on Messenger, if you're email marketing. It's not because email marketing is dead. It's because your approach is kind of suck. And that is pretty much it. And I love that. And I think it's very, very important. And also the fact that you said that you need to actually send an email once a week at least. I think that is also very important to just, keep them thinking about you. So whenever the time is ready, whenever they have or that desire to actually take the next step, they remember you and not your competitors. You'll be at the top of their head because you're consistently emailing them. And this is one of the, by the way, benefits that I see in email marketing that I think a lot of people actually mislook. It's not about only the conversions. I mean, you wouldn't be able to track the sales that come because they thought about you on email marketing. I mean, not all conversions will actually be tracked, but the fact that you're emailing them and they hear your name, they see your name, they see your content constantly throughout, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, eventually they'll be ready and eventually they make a sale. And I've been receiving emails from people for years and years and years, people like Ray Edwards, maybe pretty famous kind of copywriter, people in my country, in Israel, and that is beautiful. I think that the process, the devotion, the time they spend into writing this is so beautiful. And even if they can't really track it in the traditional kind of metrics in email software and services, I think that it is, creating so much impact and providing so much value and positioning them as expert like nothing else. And I'm sorry for taking your spot there. I just had to share it. I think it's beautiful, really.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting because I just did a launch myself, and I was going back and looking the people who joined my program. I was looking at when they joined my list, and a lot of times it was 2 and 3 years ago. And so it's like email is a slow burn, which is why I always say, start your list early, start it now, because you're digging your well before you're thirsty, right? If you've heard like Russell Brunson say that. So you're setting this foundation up, and I've seen it myself, like you're saying, you're on people's lists for years sometimes before you're acting, but it's like compound interest, right? So like you're launching and like you're able to draw in on that because you've been pouring into them for years, and it's not one-sided. They're replying to you, they're giving you ideas for offers, for content, for podcast episodes. You're having great conversations that gives you the tools you need to market to them in a way that they're able to listen to and resonate with, which is critical as a business owner, right? Like you're not just pouring in value and not getting anything back. You're actually having these really important dialogues and really important conversations in your inbox so that you can go out there and create things that resonate with the people, and you know exactly who you're talking to when you're posting on Facebook and Instagram and all the other places. You know who you're talking to because you've been talking to them in your inbox. So it really is like this beautiful like dance between the two things where it's like, yeah, you need to be consistent to get the sales, but you also need to be consistent to get your messaging hammered in.
Yeah, that is very true. I love that.
Yeah. So the second thing that I see kind of goes along with that, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs being very, very generic with their email marketing and very generic with their messaging in emails. And I would say that specifics or specificity is king, especially when it comes to copy, especially when it comes to emails, right? So if you are showing up in inboxes with just very like generic, kind of almost swipe filey language and patterns, then you're not resonating fully with your audience. You're not going to have those really important conversations, and you're not going to get clicks, and you're not going to get conversions. And usually when I say this, people are like, wait, are you against swipe files? Are you against templates? And no, not at all. but I do think that we need to personalize them. I think that as business owners, we have to look at it through the eyes of our ideal reader, our ideal customer, and say, okay, what do I need to add here to get their attention? Right? Swipe files are great. Templates are great. I have them in my program. I've used them as a copywriter before. So I definitely don't knock things like funnel scripts and things like that. I think they're awesome. But we do have to add our signature to it, because otherwise, why are they reading your email versus somebody else who went through the same prompt as you did, right? So I see that a lot, and I see people like thinking that they're almost like spinning their wheels, right? Because they might be emailing consistently and saying, okay, but it's still not working. I'm emailing consistently and consistently. But are you actually resonating with your audience? Are you actually taking the time to dig in and say, what do they need to know from me other than just the details of this program? What do they need to hear from me? What story do they need to hear from me? What false belief is running through their mind that I can bust for them so that they can hop off the fence and get into this program? Those are things that you're not going to ever find in a swipe file or a template. You're going to find it from your audience. You're going to find it from knowing who you're talking to. And if you've ever had the experience where you are reading a sales page or an email or some piece of copy where it's like, you wonder if like the person was like in your office just before you got on the page, right? Like it's so specific and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I have thought that. Yes, that has run through my mind. It's so impactful. And that's what I see a lot of people missing with copy, with email. Like they're going through the motions, they're sending it out, but they're not taking the tiny extra step to get to like the meat of the message. So that's definitely something that I see a lot of.
Yeah, that is, I totally agree with that. I think that a lot of people just try to stay neutral in a lot of topics. They feel kind of shy maybe to share their personal stories. They think that they are boring. They think that they are not good enough. They think that they will basically need more, lifelike kind of stories that will be 10 times more, basically show their success and wealth. And a lot of people, I think, miss the fact that while some people might have better stories than you, and in a way that at least show their success and stories and social proof, I think that a lot of people would actually benefit more than the stories that are closer to their current situation and to their current goals in business, in life, in things of that. And while, just like you mentioned, templates work amazingly, I think I use templates for a lot of the stuff that I do, including headlines, including copy structure and stuff. I think that just like you mentioned, if you do not alter this, if you do not make it recognizable by your own voice, you're missing the point, because it will be too generic and none will actually be full to your words, to your personality, to your character, to you as a man or a woman, and will basically, I think, further open any emails from you. So that is also something that I totally agree with. I love the fact that you shared this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it too, like just to speak to the person who is like a little insecure about sharing their stories and sharing themselves in their email and in their copy, if you think about two things, one, what you're selling them into is going to be a lot of you, right? So like I know in my program, I show up live every single week and I'm talking to my students and I'm going through Q&As and this and that. So if I am shying away from it in the sale and I'm using very generic language, and then they get into the program and it's me and I'm sharing my beliefs and I'm sharing how I do things, there's going to be a disconnect there, right? Like they don't quite know what they're buying into. And so sometimes you can see refund rates go up even if you're not really showing who you are in your sales messaging, and then in your product, you're showing up and you're being yourself, and you're saying what your stance is on, things like sweat files or whatever it is. Like we all have somewhat polarizing platforms, right? So you're showing up in that way. You can actually hurt yourself by not sharing who you are up front and not attracting the right people. And then on top of that, like I think about the programs that I've bought into, and the coaching programs that I bought into, masterminds. I bought into them because of who was selling them, right? It's very rare that someone will buy in because of a container. They're not going to buy because they're like, yes, I need another course. Yes, I want another group coaching program, right? That's not why people are buying. They're not just waking up saying, I want another membership, right? They're buying into people. Like, people buy from people. That's not a cliche for a reason, or that's a cliche for a reason, right? So it's so critical that we put ourselves out there more and more as we're selling so that people know who they're buying from. And not only does that increase your conversions, but it really does create lifelong customers. Like, we all want that lifelong bond with somebody. We all want that diehard fan, that diehard group of people who, I mean, I know marketers who, before they say what they're releasing, people are on the wait list. Why is that? It's because they're sharing who they are up front, right? Nobody is on the wait list just for a membership. So it's so critical that we do that. It's not just to get our conversions up and boost sales for 1 month. It's really to create this foundation of a business where people are paying attention to you because you're sharing who you are and they can resonate with that. And you're like a leader to them in that way. So I know it's tough sometimes to put yourself out there, but the more and more that you do it, the more you see the benefits of it. It does get easier. So if you're feeling that way, just start slow and start to build it up. And as you see the results, I promise it'll be easier and easier and easier to get to that point.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree with that. I think that, by sharing who you are, you're basically building a stronger connection. You're building more trust. You'll make it easier for them to evolve on your vision, on your products, on your offer, to take the next step. And I think that also one thing that I suffer from, and well, I as a marketer basically learn a bunch of what we're saying. I mean, it is very reasonable to think that we should tell our stories, that we should do that, we should do that. But the fact is that a lot of people don't do that. And I think it's also because they have that belief that they should create so many emails, so much stuff, so much content. And what happens because of that is that because they focus on quantity, not on quality, is that they can't really devote themselves to every single one of those emails. And when you're not a copywriter, when you're not really skilled at that, just yet, it can sometimes take so long to create just one piece. So they immediately, in advance, they already give up on that and just either duplicate something that they already shared online and put it as an email. They take something, they don't really, alter their messaging into an email. And I think that this is also a common mistake. They sometimes do very long kind of emails. They don't really understand how those emails work. And I think that you'll agree with me here that it's more about the quality of each mail. Just like you mentioned, you need to do at least once a week. But once a week is nothing like I think a lot of people believe in. I think that a lot of people try to do every single day. And because they do that, they actually suffer because it doesn't matter if you're actually doing so many emails and they remember that email wasn't really of value, it wasn't really great, it wasn't really awesome. So they'll just immediately, mute or tune out on the next deliveries that you'll make. So this is also why I personally prefer to send less emails and make sure that every single one is exciting. Every single one will need to be opened by the user because he remembers how great the benefits was in the previous ones that he opened.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all about quality over quantity. And I know that for a while there kind of was the advice to hit your list up every single day. And some people that does work for. Like, I never would say never, don't do that if that's your business plan and you're really good at creating these amazing emails every day. But it's so much more about the quality than it is about the quantity. It's so much more about what you're putting into the message and the time that you're spending to connect with that reader versus the amount of times that you're hitting them. Because it almost can have, like we talked at the beginning about how negative effects can happen if you are just hitting them up during your launch. You almost can see the exact same negative effects if you're hitting them up like just all the time with nothing really of value, because again, they will stop opening, they will stop engaging, and you're really in the same place with your email service provider with those two mistakes. So definitely focus on quality, definitely focus on crafting a message that you feel like is going to actually resonate with them versus just like, I have to hit my list, because that's not a great energy to come from anyways, right? if you're doing it just because you feel like you should and just because you feel like you have to hit send every day, you're never going to really come from an authentic place. You're going to come from a place of like, crap, I forgot to do it. I got to go run and just bust something out really quick. And that's going to come across in copy. Copy is very transparent, even if you don't realize it. So it's going to come across if you are like just rushing through and just doing it because you think that you have to do it. So definitely agree.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to share my view on this. When I first started with email, I actually thought about the bigger picture here, because as long as there's structure for your emails, as long as there are topics that are basically evergreen, uh, you might start with sending them emails once a week, maybe even once, well, twice a week or something. But eventually you'll have a pile of emails that are evergreen, that are awesome, that are really great. And you'll be able to automate that procedure, to automate that process to every new subscriber. And by that, eventually, I mean, I saw marketers with sometimes years worth of content. I'm not even kidding. I mean, they are just sending me emails for years and years and years. And I was just like, how do they do that? But the fact is that they've been doing it for so long, and they make sure that their emails are evergreen and could be sent later on. So eventually, when you have a pile of like 180 emails, you can obviously speed this up and become more frequent with your emails, at least to new subscribers. And this is how I saw this. I saw this as, okay, I start with this frequency. This is what I can do. But eventually, obviously, in like a year, if I'm consistent with that, I will be able to deliver them every single day if I choose to. Yeah, it's really awesome to do that, because on Facebook, for example, it's very different. I launch something, I post something, it dies. And I can obviously repost that, but it's nothing like email. I mean, not all will receive that, not all will see that. But if you're really having a good kind of open rates in your emails, if you're really nurturing it up and making sure that there's value, you'll get way more eyeballs on that piece of content. And it will be also much easier to make sure that you're not repetitive and not actually showing this very specific piece of information to the same kind of people, because then they get bored. If you repost, for example, you don't have that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Would it be helpful if I ran through like the core kind of email series that online businesses should have? And yeah.
I would love that. I see also Nikita writing that it will be perfect if we can give some insight about how to actually write a converting kind of piece in email. But again, if you can do that, it will be amazing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, yeah, and I can definitely get into how to write a converting email. We'll talk about just like kind of the high level of how to dig into it. But just so we kind of go through like what a typical healthy list looks like. So what I recommend doing is attaching to every like front end type offer that you have, which could either be a free offer or a low ticket offer, either wherever anybody would come in to your list. I would recommend having a nurture sequence right off the bat. So I typically do a 5-part series that welcomes somebody onto your list, that says, hi, this is who I am. Like, just like what we were talking about before, where if you are sharing who you are and sharing your stance on things, people are immediately going to be either drawn to you or they're going to pull away, which either way is fine, because we want to keep people who love us on our list, and we want to just bless and release those who don't resonate with our message, right? So I typically do that in a 5-part series right when somebody comes into the list. And then from there, they're dropped into a place where we're nurturing them once a week, up to sometimes twice a week. That's what I do with my personal list. I have a podcast, so I'll blast that once a week. And then I'll do more of like a content-driven piece, and I'll do that like twice a week. So I'm usually hitting my list up at around that schedule. And then for each launch, I do a promo series that leads up to the launch. Then I will do the launch, and I'll email every day during the launch. And I do like value packed emails. So here's how you could use the product, not just about the product, but how to use it, make it personal for them. And then I will do a follow-up series for abandoned carts. So that's typically like how I structure a healthy list. And I know that sometimes people, like when email marketing gets brought up, it's automatically overwhelming because they don't even know what kinds of campaigns they should be creating. And so I hope that that's helpful. Just kind of see, like, you need a nurture sequence, you need a promo sequence, and then you need a follow-up sequence. And if you have those, you're on your way. As long as you're nurturing throughout the weeks and nurturing throughout in between launches, you're on your way to having a very healthy and good email strategy. So you're not like wondering, oh, should I be emailing more or less? What kind of series do I need here and there? There's just kind of these core series, and you really reuse them and use them based on when you're launching and what products that you're launching.
I love that. I actually have a question about the nurturing kind of campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if someone just entered your email list, it can be from a lead magnet that you own, from a webinar that you did. It can be anything. And now they obviously get, tagged on the specific kind of, because you also suggested to have actually segmentations, like different, the ones that purchase low ticket, the cold audience maybe, or normal purchasers, or even the ones who took you up on expensive programs, because obviously there will be in specific, in different levels, and you wouldn't want to deliver the same kind of messages to each one. You wouldn't want to promote a $7 blueprint to someone who just took you on an offer that costs $1,000. And that is, I love that. The question that I have, however, in the nurturing campaign, that obviously can vary. I mean, I saw people do that 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks. Do you actually present any kind of sale during the nurturing campaign?
Yeah, so it can vary. If somebody bought into something, then I typically in number 4 and 5, I will say like, here's the next level. Like if they bought into your low end offer and you have something that's like, say it's, a $37 SLO funnel that you're running, and then the next thing would be like a group coaching program with you, I would mention that in email number 4 and 5. And then typically in email number 5 is kind of like a roundup email. So I'll do like, okay, that's my story, because we're going through your story, like email 1, 2, 3, 4. We're kind of going through your story, going through your origin, how you can serve them, how your experience has set you up perfectly to serve them is really essentially what you're going through, right? And so you're going through all that. And then in the 5th email, I typically am like, okay, now here's all the ways to find me. Here's the free Facebook group. Here's my podcast. Here's another lead magnet that you might have missed. So it's kind of like a roundup email. And then depending on if they came in through a free offer, I typically don't offer something until the 5th email, and I'll do just like the here's how to find more of me. If they did come in through a paid offer, then I'll offer them another paid thing. So you can kind of start to segment, start to experiment and see what works with your list, what works with your value ladder, right? Because everybody has a slightly different value ladder and a slightly different target audience. So you kind of know that for yourself as you're listening to this. But that's typically the way that I structure it. So no matter what, in the 5th email, I do a roundup of like all the other ways to find me or to find my client. And that way we're sending them different places. They can start to get announcements for the podcast, and we can kind of like get them almost indoctrinated. It's like an orientation to your world, right? So you can almost just get them like indoctrinated into who you are, what you release all the time, like where to find you, where you're the most active. You're kind of just giving them like the lay of the land.
Okay, I love that. And I think that it sounds very reasonable. I mean, a lot of people introduce themselves from the very beginning. I was like that too when I first started. And I think that that caused me to lose my audience. I mean, they were no longer interested, because instead of just providing value, I was just like, okay. And considering the fact that they just, took action on something that I've done, otherwise they wouldn't be in my email. I think that asking right at the beginning for another kind of commitment is kind of heavy. And obviously it will repel some, and also affect your future messaging with them. So I love that very much. I think that also a great question that I had when I first started is that I wasn't sure about how long my emails should be. If I should, do it quickly and just refer them to taking action on some link or something, maybe just giving them a glimpse and then asking them to actually check the full piece, or maybe just provide the full story, the full sale inside the email.
Yeah, good question. So it kind of depends on your list. So you can start to test things, and the way that you would test is to look at your click-through rate. So every email has an open rate, and then there's a click-through rate, and the click-through rate means that they've clicked on a link within your email. And typically, like I use ConvertKit, and so I can not only see my click-through rate, but I can see which link they clicked. And so you can go through and see like, okay, if they're reading all the way to the bottom of my email and it's like a 400-word email and I have a good click-through rate, like maybe it's over 2%, and they're clicking the bottom of the link there, then we know that they're reading the email, right? If your click-through rate is not good and your email is very long, then you know maybe it's too long, right? So you can kind of start to play with that based on the data. I also do a pretty good mixture. So like for my podcast blasts, I will do a short thing and it's very like teaser, right? So it's like learn. I just did one on the mindset that I had to have for the launch that I just recently did. So like my email was very short and it was like, learn the number one thing that made the difference for me this launch to make it the biggest one ever, or whatever like the hook is. And that's just my email. And then I have the cover art for my podcast and the links, and that's it. And then on Thursdays, I typically do like today, I just did probably maybe a 250 to 300 word email to my list that was a little more like, here's what's going on. Yesterday, this happened to me and it made me think of this. And I wanted to reach out and encourage you, keep going, don't stop. Like that was my message for today, right? So I do that. And for those, you just kind of pay attention to what's your open rate like, what's your click-through rate like, and you can kind of start to gauge like longer, shorter, that kind of thing. It's almost like if any of you are familiar with like Instagram strategies, right? Like you can kind of pilot and test like long captions and short captions and see like what's working best. So there is always some level of like reading the data and reading what response you're getting in order to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your list.
Okay, I love that. By the way, a follow-up question, because you mentioned that you're working with ConvertKit. Any kind of software that you would recommend startup kind of fellows in email marketing? Because I saw a bunch of different sayings. Some people are with GetResponse, some hate MailChimp, some love MailChimp, some think that ConvertKit is the best. Do you have besides the fact that you're using this, any kind of favorite?
Yeah, so ConvertKit is my favorite, mostly because I've been using them for a long time and I'm very, very comfortable with them, user-friendly wise. And so I'm like, everything is set up in them. The other one that I recommend is ActiveCampaign. And typically like I get a 50-50 split when I'm talking to a big group of people. Those are like the two kind of, I would call them like the top dogs in the email service provider. In my program, I had someone go through and do like a whole walkthrough of both of those and how to tag and everything. And those are the only two ones that I included because MailChimp, things like that, they were, I mean, they're an email service provider, right? But typically the more data and the more specific you can get, the better. And what I've found with both ActiveCampaign and ConvertKit is you can actually dig in and see, like what I was just saying, you can see not only what links were clicked, but which ones in the email were clicked. Not only, that things were clicked, but which people were clicked. There's a lot more like reporting and data that goes into these kind of bigger systems. And so that's why I recommend them, not just because they're, like the most popular ones, but it's really, really important that you're able to like see into your data because email is just as much creative as it is science. Like if we're able to read that info and read what our list is telling us, then we're able to adjust all the way through. And so those are the two that I recommend the most.
Okay, that's great. Actually, ConvertKit I didn't hear much about, but I will be sure to check them out. Another question that I actually had, and I was thinking when I first started, is having a big list that is not converting, not engaging, hurting your performance in email? I mean, do you regularly delete mails, not just because of pricing, but because it's hurting your performance?
Yep. I love that you asked that. So yes, I am. So if you are emailing your list at least 4 times a month, then I recommend every 30 days deleting people who have not interacted with you in 90 days. So that's like the schedule that I follow. As long as you're hitting your list at least 4 times a month. If you're not, then you have to start doing that first. And I would do that for a couple months in order to see who's not engaging you. And then after that, go through. And I'll tell you, I just did that for my list. It had fallen through the cracks. I thought that, someone on my team was doing it and they weren't. So I went through and scrubbed my list and my open rates increased like 5 to 8%. So it really does make a really big difference when you are talking about that, because in, like we were talking about before, if you are hitting your list inconsistently and people aren't opening your list or aren't opening your emails, you're getting dinged in your email service provider, right? They're not seeing you as a credible sender. And so you're getting sent to spam, you're getting sent to promo, the promo tab, or junk or whatever. And it's the same thing when you have a big list that's not engaged, your open rate is low. And then every time you're sending it, it's a low. And then you're getting sent to promo and it's a low, right? So it really is important to keep your list clean and keep making sure that everybody who's on your list has engaged with you in the last 30 days. There's strategies that you can do to try to re-engage those cold subscribers, right? Like there's a lot of things that you can do, but as a blanket rule, that's typically what I say.
I love that. That is a golden nugget right there. I learned something new. Uh, by the way, is there any kind of percentage that you hold to be like the minimum before you should maybe research what is happening? Like a minimum kind of percentage for open rates or click-through rates that makes you like, there's something wrong here?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on your industry, like where you fall. And then it also depends on how engaged your list has been before. So typically I don't start to benchmark until a list has been talked to for 60 to 90 days, because it's hard. Like if your list has been cold for a really long time and you initially start emailing them, your unsubscribe rates are going to shoot up. Your open rates are going to still be low for a while, right? As you're cleaning, as you're optimizing, whatever. Typically anywhere between like 20 to 30% open rate, depending again on your industry and on how engaged your list is. It's kind of hard to give a benchmark, but that's typically what I'll do. I can send it to you in this group. I'll drop it when we're done. There's, I think it's called Campaign Monster. It's like this massive roundup they did of 2020, like engagement benchmarks. And so you would go through and you can find your industry like e-com, obviously like internet marketing where we are, like there's all kinds of different industries, and it'll tell you not only like the open rate and the click-through rate, but it'll also tell you like what days of the week they found the best to be. And again, all of this is like, take it with a grain of salt because you know your list. But like if you're just starting out and you want like the benchmarks, you can check that out. And then typically what I do is once I've been running an email campaign, like as a service provider, what I do, once we've been running for about 90 days, then I start to benchmark my client against themselves, right? Because you can only like if they're getting consistently 40 to 44% open rates and all of a sudden they go to 20%, even if that's like an industry standard, like we know something's wrong because we're seeing like that consistently for 90 days and then all of a sudden they tank. We're like, okay, did we change something? Did something happen on the server? Like that's when we start to know that something's going wrong because we're benchmarking them against themselves. So that's typically what I say when it comes to like the data.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds amazing. Sounds also very logical to do. I love that, and I would appreciate if you can share with me the
I'll drop it.
monster campaign. I think you said.
Yeah.
It would be great to just check it out. I'm really interested by the numbers.
Yeah.
So that is for that. That is really awesome. Anything else that you maybe can share with people who are just starting out with their email campaigns? Obviously, they want bigger, open rates, bigger click-through rates. They're trying to, use that as a platform to really nurture their leads. Um, it would be really awesome, I think, if you can maybe picture yourself as someone who's just starting out. What would be the piece of advice that you would share with you?
Yeah. So I can also address the question we got earlier, like how to write converting emails, and kind of roll that into it. So the one thing that I see that gets missed sometimes when we're talking about like writing engaging emails and that kind of thing is we forget that there are like pieces to an email, just like there are with sales pages, like you have the headline, you have the this, you have the that. So typically an email is broken up into three pieces. And so we have the hook of an email, we have what I call the bridge of an email, and then we have the call to action. And so the way that I write emails, I call it the dessert first method just because that's what came to me. I write the end of the email first when I'm doing any kind of like promo or follow-up sequence. I write the end. So I write the call to action first. So if it is to go join this free Facebook group, if it's to join my free webinar whatever it is, I write the call to action first. And then I will go through and I'll write the hook of the email, the top of the email, and then I'll bridge the two of them together. So the reason that I do it that way is because a lot of times I could see it, like I'm a very visual learner, right? And so I would see, like, I would start out with a hook and I'd be like, okay, it's got to be exciting. It's got to grab their attention. It's got, like all the things that we know about copy. I would have all that going through my head and I would create this really exciting, enticing hook. And then I'd be like, okay, crap. Now like my call to action, it was like they were missing each other. Do you know what I mean? And so I started to write the call to action first, and then everything would be targeted at that call to action, right? All the different angles, because you think about like a webinar, for instance, right? There are a lot of different hooks that you could use for that webinar, right? You could come at it from this direction. You could come at it from that direction, right? We know like the 3 secrets rule, right? You could come at it from any of those 3 secrets. There's a lot of different ways you could go. And if you're not pulling in that call to action, if you're not pulling in the verbiage that you're using there, then you're going to end up writing like a very long email. You're going to end up kind of being wordy. You're going to end up like losing them halfway through the email, right? So I write the bottom first and I write very, very targeted conversion copy. Like, here's what you're going to learn. Don't forget this. This is what needs to happen. You're feeling this, right? And then I go through and I pick out the hook based on that. And then I just link the two of them together. And it's made not only my writing a lot faster, but it has actually increased the conversions of my email because it's so targeted. Everything is so targeted. And so that's typically like, those are the components of a good email, but also that's like how, if I was going to say to get started right now, writing good emails, that's the advice that I would give, because it makes your email and your copy so targeted that you can't go wrong. You can't like, you're not finding yourself, down a rabbit hole here and down a rabbit hole there and missing your actual purpose of sending out the email in the first place. Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry that I actually muted and I forgot about that. I love that. I think it is a fantastic piece of advice. I can vouch for myself that I'm actually doing something similar with my content creation. I think that having the goal in mind just makes the whole process a lot easier, because you know what you're building into. You know that eventually you're going to have a call to action that invites them into a webinar, invites them into a program, invites them, I don't know, to a YouTube video. But unless you have that in mind, unless you already know that, you wouldn't be able to effectively kind of build it through. It will be just like, okay, share with you a story, and then out of the blue, I'm sharing something that is totally unrelated. And then you have to rewrite it because it feels wrong. So just like you mentioned, it saves a ton of time. It improves your conversions. And I think that it just, it becomes a solid kind of piece that is just, more pleasant, I think, to read, less confusing. Yeah. So I love that. That was for sure another golden nugget. So 3 parts, hook, bridge, and a call to action. By the way, are you providing the call to action just once at the end of the email? Because I know that a bunch of people actually, provide some exit points, just like a funnel that you have a button every kind of 2 to 3 elements.
Yeah. So it depends on the length of the email, and it depends on kind of what we're promoting. But I do, especially if it's like the first email of a series to introduce a program, typically as a rule of thumb, I will do like, if the program is called, like, let's say just funnel scripts or whatever, like if the program's called funnel scripts, the first time that I say the word funnel scripts in the email, I'll link it. And then as I go through, about halfway through, like, so we have that, then we'll have like maybe the stack, then I'll say like the link. And then sometimes I'll do a PS at the bottom that has the link. I try not to do more than 3 links. And this is kind of like, there's a gray area, but I try not to do more than 3 links in one email, because that does increase your chances of going into promo tabs. And I also do not like really format my emails in that, like, I don't do like big banners and like a lot of graphics in an email, because again, that can increase your chance of going into the promo tab. Sorry, our lawn guy is here. I don't know if you can hear him.
I actually can, but that is actually really awesome to know. I didn't know that more than three links can get you into the promo, which is obviously something, guys, that you wouldn't want to be in.
Right.
So that is great, and I think that three is more than enough. I think that if you're doing over more links than that, it's actually becoming too aggressive, too pushy. I mean, if they didn't take you up on the three other links, they're not going to take you up on the fourth one.
Yeah.
So I love that as well. Uh, and yeah, by the way, are there any other tips that you can give on how to avoid the spam box, the spam, the promo? I get a lot of times that I know that I get to the updates section on the Gmail, and I don't know how to escape that area.
Yeah, there's always like kind of a gray area because some things work for some people. It's like there's no clear written rules as to why you end up in those places. So sometimes it's hard to give clear written rules to get out. But one thing that I've done for myself and I've seen some good results with is whenever you're writing a fulfillment email, so an email that would come after somebody bought something from you or downloaded something from you, like the first email, the deliverability email, I include a line at the bottom that says like, hey, can you just make sure and let me know that you got this so I know that you're squared away? Because if they hit reply and say got it, you're in their list. You're on their white list. So, and that's like, it's called a whitelist action. And so if you can build that in, like if you think about somebody who just bought something from you, they're going to search through all of their folders to get to it. And that's the only time they'll ever do that, right? They're never going to be like, oh, I wonder if Daniel emailed me. Let me go and look in my trash, right? But if they bought something from you, they're going to and go look and say, okay, maybe it went to trash. And if you are in their trash or their promo or their spam, and they find you and you say, hey, can you just let me know that you're squared away, that you got this, whatever, and they reply and say got it, then you're already in their contact list. And so that can be really, really helpful. If possible, you want them to do that twice. If you can work it into doing it twice, that will guarantee that you're in their contact list.
I love that. I think that this is, I just want to make sure that I understand that in full because that is also a golden nugget that I think you just dropped. I know that a lot of people, the first email is actually instructions on how to white label that email. Are you saying that you can do a similar procedure just by encouraging them to reply, like having something like, if you have any questions, you can feel free? Is that
Yeah.
a similar kind of effect? Because that
Yeah.
is awesome. It is so much more pleasant, so much more easy than just reading through instructions, boring instructions, and how you white label something on Gmail. That
Yeah.
is really amazing.
Yeah, it humanizes it, right? Because otherwise, what's the purpose for them? Like if they're reading something and they're like, make sure to click this and drag it to this folder and then drop it and then do this and then do that. And they're like, why? Right? But if you come at it from like, hey, I want to make sure you got this. Is it downloading good for you? Are you able to get in? Right? Like then you're coming at it from a customer service standpoint and they're like, yeah, I'm in, right? Like I just did this with my launch and over 50% of my people were like, hey, got it, thanks. And then as a bonus, sometimes they will give you social proof or a testimonial right there. Like, got it. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love that you did X, Y, and Z because they already have you, right? So then you can just take those and screenshot them and you don't even have to ask them for social proof at the end, right? You just have it.
That is so true. And I love that. I think that out of all requests that I got to white level, I think that I basically took only one. And that is because I know that person and I just want to hear more from it. But the average kind of request that I get on that, I never take him up on that. Because again, just like you mentioned, why should I read boring instructions on how to do something? I hate instructions. I don't have the time for that, and I wouldn't do that unless, again, there's something in it for me. And if you can encourage them just to communicate with you, make yourself make sure that they understand that you are free to contact. They can ask questions. They can maybe even get a freebie or something by returning you an email. I think it is so much better, and I will be sure to use it immediately. Like at the moment we finish with this, I will make sure to do that because I think it's a fantastic piece of advice. I like that.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I've been struggling with the update kind of section that I'm inside for a long time now, and I think it's a terrific thing to do. Um, Anything else that you can recommend people to do?
Yeah, honestly, it really just comes back to showing up for your people. Like, if I've learned anything out of all the years that I've been doing this and all the years that I've been interacting with really successful, high level people, is it always comes back to your person. Like, who is your person that you're talking to? When we're talking about what message you're going to put out, when we're talking about what offers you're going to create, when we're talking about what you're going to podcast about, it all comes back to your human. Like, who is your person? And if you can come at email marketing that way, if you can come at any of your stuff that way, then it all of a sudden is authentic, right? Everybody wants to be authentic in their marketing. Everybody hears that word. It's a buzzword. And that's the way to do it, is to keep your person in front of mind. I just wrote an email to my list, and I did the same thing that I do every single time, which is I take a second and I like center in on my avatar, my person. And I ask myself, I have a name for her. I ask myself, what does she need to hear from me? What does she need to hear from me this week? Like, what's going on in her world? And that has changed the game for me. That's what I always recommend for my clients and my students to do, is keep your person in front of mind.
I love that. Yeah, I think that it also comes down to this: to be human, to be kind, to be also patient with that, I think, and to understand that split testing and trial and error is basically very much needed in here. And yeah, I love that. I think that we were able to present a lot of the benefits in email marketing as well. And that is really, really cool. I love that we were able to do this.
Finish the training. That is awesome. I hope you've enjoyed that. Let me know down in the comments what you think. I also have two things to share with you. One, I want you to remember that this was a live experience inside my Authority Hackers Facebook group. If you want to join us on the live trainings, I would highly encourage you to use the link below to join now, okay? Number two, I actually made a 6-page PDF file out of, well, with everything that I learned during my session with Brittany. It was so awesome that I just had to write things down. If you'd like to access that, I can give you free access. All you need to do is, again, to join the group. Once you're in, please message me and I'll be sure to send the file to you, okay? And if you've enjoyed this training, again, let me know down what you think. Also, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.